The economic freedom fighters are yet to deny or confirm reports that its deputy president, Floyd Shivambu, has resigned. The EFF is, however, expected to brief the media at noon on the matter. According to News 24, Shivambu tendered his resignation to the party last night. The reasons for his alleged departure from the party, which he co-founded alongside Julius Malema, remains unclear at this stage. There were, however, signs that relations had soured between the two men last year ahead of the party's 10th anniversary. Malema was also reported to have been unhappy with Shivambu's efforts in leading the party's election campaign in KZN. Now, staying with Newzroom Afrika for more on this developing story, Newzroom Afrika's Ziniko Mhlaba is following the story for us and joins us now live. Ziniko, it is quite a big news story, breaking news, if actually it is indeed true. Tell us more of what we do know at this stage.
Good morning, Massa. Well, we are still waiting for that official briefing, which is going to be taking place midday today at 12. That's when we'll get the actual accurate information as to why the media has been urgently called to the Winnie Madikizela house here in Marshalltown, downtown Johannesburg. So you'll remember that this is the period where political parties, Massa, are reflecting on how they performed during the general elections which took place in May here in South Africa at the provincial and the national level. So there's been a lot of reflections from the MK party, the ANC itself. Just last week they had a long NEC meeting where they reflect on how they have done in this past election and what could be the consequences of those performances by the ANC. So it might not be really strange as to why the EFF now is calling us today to listen to what they'll be sharing with us. But as far as the performance of the party indeed does have some stock to take, considering the fact that for the first time it has been moved from that third biggest position, which is a position the party has been enjoying since 2014 when they started contesting for elections for the very first time in South Africa. I'll also remember that this was about 2 years after the two biggest leaders of the party at that time. I'm talking about Floyd Shivambu and Julius Malema. It was 2 years after they were expelled from the ANC, a party they had grew up under within those structures of the ANC, from COSAS all the way to the ANC Youth League, and that's where they really matured politically, and this when they started taking on some national interests, some policy directions and ideologies of the ANC at the time, especially when it comes to economic freedom in their lifetime. That was the theme and their policy and their agenda when they were still leading the ANC Youth League, and that was prior to 2012. And of course there were some rifts within the leadership of the ANC at the time, which eventually led to the expulsion of Julius Malema, and of course Floyd Shivambu was just suspended for 3 years at the time, but eventually the entity of the time decided to expel Floyd Shivambu. That's when they started now contemplating a particular platform or route they will use to champion what they called the economic freedom at that time. And of course eventually we saw the EFF being launched in Soweto just before the election. So we are where we are today, reflecting on the history of the EFF. However, these two leaders, Floyd Shivambu and Malema, had always been, side by side. So we don't know yet as to what is it that we'll be hearing at 12 o'clock. As Massa said, as you said, Massa, in your intro, that there were some, concerns about how Floyd Shivambu had led the campaign in KwaZulu-Natal as he was the national leader, was deployed in that province and eventually replaced by Marshall Dlamini. And of course, we saw Floyd Shivambu being moved to the Eastern Cape, which was the province he had led before in terms of gunning its campaign. So those are the dynamics, and I think more than anything, it's going to be reflective of how these parties, how the party itself, EFF, has performed. And also remember that now we've got MK, the MK party that has replaced the EFF as the third biggest party here in South Africa politically. politically, but also we have the EFF not being part of the government of national unity, of the government of the provincial leadership here in the executive of Gauteng. So those are the dynamics we think, those conversations we'll be having here at 12 o'clock will be relating to all those dynamics we've seen. So we'll wait and see, and maybe see if in the next hour or so there'll be some insights in terms of why this press briefing has been called and why, on what basis, but also see who will be presiding over that this press briefing. Because that is going to be very telling, because we've seen in the past the leader of the party, Julius Malema, flanked by the officials of the EFF presiding over previous press briefings. So we'll see if we will see that, and if there are any noticeable absentees. And I think during that press conference, those who will be able to pose those questions as journalists to the leadership, and depending on how they respond and what examples and reasons they will be giving in terms of the possible absentees we might see, then we'll have a clear picture in terms of what will be happening with the EFF from 12 o'clock and onwards, and how they will be approaching the politics agenda here in South Africa should any noticeable or very interesting developments be announced at 12 o'clock.
Yeah, and Ziniko, as you're mentioning as well, that history of Julius Malema and Floyd Shivambu and their exit also from the ANC to the formation of the EFF as well. They've been pretty close over the years too, but as we also said in the intro as well, it seems the writings were on the wall, but always dismissed by the EFF as well, particularly the EFF leader Julius Malema, to say there isn't trouble in paradise. Should the party confirm that this is indeed the case, what kinds of reasoning are we expecting? You mentioned also the performance of the party and KZN, and of course, Floyd Shivambu was also a part of that, but he was also a part of drafting the manifesto, so the manifesto drafting committee as well. The messaging of the EFF in these general elections in 2024, is that something that we can also look forward the EFF going to, going into acceptance that they really did not do so well, because post the elections, they haven't been able to just kind of have a sober understanding of what had transpired?
Yes, Masa, you remember that we talked about the deputy president of the party, but also another factor I think we can put down as one of the dynamics that might be leading to what will be announced at 12 o'clock. Remember that the EFF is heading towards, a People's Assembly, which is, in a general language, is the electoral conference of the party in December. And we've seen some, statements or some utterances that have been made by some structures of the EFF, especially when it comes to the student command, which is the youth structure of the economic freedom fighters, saying that they have some ideas in terms of who must take which position within the party. But we also know that we still have Julius Malema as the leader of the party, who's still young, who's still fresh, who still believes that he still has some time, on his side, that will allow him to lead the party. But there are people who have been saying that Floyd Shivambu has to step up. Floyd Shivambu must, get out of his shell and start stamping his own authority as the leader who has the capacity to take the party forward. So we don't know whether this announcement will be hearing at 12 o'clock is linked to any contestation dynamics that we might see heading to December. But as I said, that the performance of the party generally, has not been positive. Looking at how ambitious the EFF has been, they have been saying that they are government in waiting for some time since 2014, and they did well, in their first year, in their second year as well. So this is the very first time the EFF got a shock of their life when they were, replaced by the MK party as the third biggest party. So whether those reflections, will then be pinned on individuals on how they've performed, in their respective provinces which they were deployed to or not. But we also know that the EFF did not do so well, in provinces such as Limpopo. So we don't know whether it will be an overall reflection of how the party has done, or it will be about, well, we've reflected as the party and we think this particular individual did not do enough, or whatever we can speculate leading up to 12 o'clock, we might be surprised and shocked, when we hear the actual facts and accurate information from the relevant parties who will be presiding over that press briefing at 12 o'clock.
Well, that's less than 2 hours away, so we don't have to keep guessing for too long. Ziniko, thank you so much for that report. We will be keeping a close eye on that story throughout the morning.